The manager smirked, telling me I didn't belong in my own restaurant, until a single tap on my phone plunged the entire dining room into darkness. The scent of rosemary and roasted garlic wrapped around me the moment the valet opened my door. It was the scent of success, of late nights and early mornings, the very essence of my husband David's dream. Aura wasn't just a restaurant to us. It was the culmination of a decade of shared sacrifice. And tonight, it was supposed to be the backdrop for our 8th anniversary celebration. David was already inside, orchestrating a surprise, he'd said with a wink before I left the house. He loved big gestures, and I loved him for it. I smoothed down my silk dress, a deep emerald green that David adored, and walked towards the grand oak doors. The low hum of contented conversation and the soft clinking of silverware spilled out, a symphony of a perfect evening. At the host stand stood a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, with a perfectly starched collar and a face that looked like it had soured on a lemon years ago. His name tag read, Gregory, Manager. "Good evening," I said with a warm smile. "I have a reservation under Carter, for 2. Gregory's eyes did a slow, deliberate crawl from my heels to my braided hair, and his thin lips tightened. He didn't even glance at the booking screen. "I'm afraid we're fully booked tonight, ma'am." His tone was dismissive, final. I felt a familiar, weary prickle on my skin, but I pushed it down. "I think you'll find it's there. David Carter. He called it in this afternoon." He sighed, a theatrical puff of air that was meant to convey how burdened he was by my very presence. "As I said, we are at capacity. We have a very strict policy." He looked me up and down again, this time with a clear glint of disdain. "And a dress code." I glanced down at my dress, a designer piece I'd bought specifically for tonight, and my classic pumps. I was more than appropriately dressed. I was elegant. But I knew this wasn't about my clothes. It was about the skin they were on. "There must be a mistake," I said, my voice firm but even. I refused to let him see me falter. "My husband is the owner. He's waiting for me inside." A smirk, ugly and condescending, spread across Gregory's face. "Of course he is," he said, his voice dripping with mock belief. "Ma'am, we get people trying this all the time. If you don't have a confirmed reservation, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. We need to maintain a certain atmosphere for our actual patrons." The word "actual" landed like a slap. My patrons. My husband's patrons. The people whose money paid this man's salary. The anger, hot and sharp, began to burn through my composure. All the nights David and I spent painting these walls, picking out the fixtures, tasting every single dish on the menu until it was perfect. All of it was being guarded by this gatekeeper who saw me as less than. "I am not leaving," I said, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous octave. "Get on your radio and ask for David Carter. Tell him his wife is at the door." Gregory actually laughed, a short, sharp, ugly bark. "I'm not disturbing Mr. Carter for this nonsense. He's a very busy man." He gestured to a burly security guard standing near the door. "Frank, could you please escort this individual off the premises? She's causing a disturbance." My blood ran cold. He was going to have me physically removed from my own restaurant on my anniversary. The humiliation was a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. The security guard, a large man with a regretful look in his eyes, took a hesitant step toward me. This was it. The moment where I could scream, cry, make a scene. But that's what he wanted. He wanted the stereotype. I wouldn't give it to him. Instead, I held up a single, steady hand. "Don't touch me," I commanded, my voice ringing with an authority that made the guard pause. Gregory's smug face began to look impatient. "Just get her out of here, Frank." I met Gregory's gaze, a cold fire burning in my own. I slowly reached into my clutch and pulled out my phone. He smirked, probably thinking I was going to make a pointless, angry call. "That won't help you," he sneered. I didn't look away from him. With my thumb, I bypassed the lock screen and tapped a single app on my home screen. A simple, elegant A for Aura. It was the master control app David had designed for us. I navigated to the lighting controls, my fingers moving with practiced ease. I pressed one button. Throughout the entire bustling restaurant, every light flickered off for a full second, plunging the room into darkness and shocked silence before snapping back on at 75% brightness. The music stuttered and died. A wave of confused murmurs rippled through the diners. Gregory's smug expression evaporated, replaced by wide-eyed panic as he looked around the dining room. His jaw hung slack. I looked up from my phone, my expression like ice. "The system seems to be having a glitch," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the stunned quiet. "As the majority shareholder of this establishment, I should probably have someone look at that." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink into him. But first, I locked my gaze onto his terrified eyes. "You and I need to have a very serious conversation about your future." The color drained from Gregory's face, leaving it a pasty, mottled gray. His mouth opened and closed silently, like a fish gasping for air. The security guard, Frank, had wisely taken 2 large steps back, his expression one of profound relief at not having laid a hand on me. Around us, the dining room was a sea of upturned faces, conversations abandoned, forks hovering mid-air. They were all watching the bizarre drama unfold at the entrance. Ignoring Gregory's pathetic, sputtering form, I stepped past the host stand and into my restaurant. The air shifted as I moved. I was no longer an outsider begging for entry. I was the queen returning to her court. I caught the eye of Maria, our head waitress, whose face was a mixture of confusion and dawning recognition. "Maria," I said, my voice calm and clear, cutting through the silence, "could you please reset the audio system to the anniversary playlist and bring the house lights back to 100%? Thank you." She nodded immediately, scurrying off to do my bidding. My simple commands, my familiarity with the staff and the systems, were a more powerful statement than any shouting match could have been. It cemented my authority. "Ma'am, I am so sorry," Gregory stammered, scrambling after me. "It was a misunderstanding. A terrible, terrible misunderstanding." I turned to face him, my expression unmoved. "A misunderstanding? No, Gregory, I think you understood perfectly. You saw a black woman, and you decided she didn't belong. You assumed I was lying. You assumed I was beneath your actual patrons. You didn't see the owner. You saw a problem to be removed." "No, I swear, You just what?" I interrupted, my voice dropping. "You just followed your gut? You just enforced a dress code that only seemed to apply to me? You were about to have me physically thrown out of the business that I poured my life savings and my soul into. Tell me, Gregory, which part of that was the misunderstanding?" He withered under my gaze, his eyes darting around for an escape that wasn't there. It was then that a new voice cut through the tension. "Amelia, honey, what's going on?" David. He was walking towards us from the private dining room, a bouquet of my favorite lilies in his hand and a confused smile on his face. The smile vanished the second he took in the scene. Me, standing firm and furious. Gregory, pale and trembling. The entire restaurant watching us. He rushed to my side, his eyes scanning me for any sign of distress. "What happened? Are you okay?" I reached out and touched his arm, a silent reassurance. "I'm fine, David. Gregory was just explaining the restaurant's new entry policy to me. It seems to be very exclusive." David's head snapped towards the manager. The warmth in his eyes was replaced by a glacial fury that was far more terrifying than my own. He didn't need a long explanation. He'd seen this look on my face before. He knew exactly what had happened. "You," David said, his voice dangerously low. He took a step toward Gregory, who flinched. "You're the new manager Richard hired last week." "Yes, Mr. Carter," Gregory stammered. "Pack your things, go to my office, wait for HR. You are fired." It was swift, brutal, and absolute. A wave of relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. Gregory's terror morphed into sheer, unadulterated desperation. He couldn't accept it. "Fired?" "No, please, Mr. Carter, you don't understand," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "I was only following orders. It was Richard. Richard was the one who told us we had to be more selective. He said we needed to actively curate the clientele to maintain the brand's image. He said your investment was at stake." My breath hitched. Richard was David's hand-picked general manager, a celebrated industry veteran he'd hired to handle operations, so we could finally take a step back. I turned to look at my husband, whose face had gone from furious to utterly thunderstruck. David had trusted this man with our dream, and Richard had been poisoning it from the inside. David's face was a mask of disbelief and dawning horror. "Richard," he whispered, the name tasting like poison on his tongue. He looked from Gregory's desperate, sweating face to mine. He wasn't questioning the accusation. He was processing the depth of the betrayal. All the pieces were clicking into place. The vague complaints from staff members David had dismissed as growing pains, the financial reports from Richard that showed a slight, inexplicable dip in weeknight traffic. It all made a sick kind of sense now. "Get him," David said, his voice a low growl directed at Frank, the security guard. Now, as Frank hurried towards the back offices, I felt a strange, cold calm settle over me. Gregory was just a symptom. Richard was the disease. He had taken the beautiful, inclusive vision we'd built and twisted it into something ugly, all while smiling in our faces and cashing our checks. A moment later, Richard appeared, striding into the dining room with the easy confidence of a man in charge. He was handsome, silver-haired, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. He saw David and me, and a professional smile fixed itself on his face. "David, Amelia, what's going on here? Gregory, why is the music off?" His eyes flickered to Gregory's terrified expression, and for a split second, the polished mask slipped. He knew. "Gregory was just telling me about your new policy, Richard," I said, stepping forward. My voice was even, devoid of the tremor of anger I felt inside. "The one about actively curating the clientele. I was hoping you could elaborate." Richard's smile tightened. He shot a look of pure venom at Gregory before turning back to us. "Amelia, this is a gross misunderstanding. I was simply instructing the staff to ensure we maintain the high-end atmosphere our patrons expect. It's a standard business practice to protect the brand." "To protect the brand?" I echoed, taking another step closer. The patrons in the nearby tables were shamelessly listening, their dinners forgotten. "Our brand is Aura. It's named for the feeling you get when you walk in the door. A feeling of warmth, of welcome, of belonging. Who exactly were you protecting it from, Richard? From me?" He began to bluster, waving a dismissive hand. "Of course not. This is ridiculous. Gregory is clearly incompetent and trying to save his own skin." "Oh, he is incompetent," I agreed, my voice slicing through his defense. "But he's also a product of the culture you created. You didn't tell him to turn away a black woman, did you? You're too smart for that. You just used clever, sanitized words like curate, image, and demographic. You gave him a weapon and trusted his prejudice to aim it for you." David stepped beside me, a united front. "You're finished, Richard. Both of you," he said, gesturing to Gregory. "Clear out your offices. Security will escort you out." Richard's face contorted with rage. "You can't do this. I have a contract. I'm sure my lawyer will enjoy reading the part of it that allows for gross misconduct and intentional sabotage of our company's core values. I said sweetly. "Now get out of my restaurant." Defeated, Richard's shoulders slumped. He and Gregory were led away, a pathetic procession of failed gatekeepers. The silence they left behind was heavy, thick with the unsaid thoughts of every person in the room. I knew this was a critical moment. How we handled this would define Aura from now on. I turned to face our guests. "Good evening, everyone," I said, my voice projecting across the room. "My name is Amelia Carter, and along with my husband David, I am the owner of Aura. I want to sincerely apologize for the disruption to your evening. What you witnessed tonight was a failure to uphold the single most important value of this establishment, that everyone is welcome here." I locked eyes with a few of the patrons, letting them see my sincerity. This restaurant was built on a dream of creating a beautiful space for this community to celebrate, to connect, and to feel at home. That dream has no dress code based on the color of your skin. It has no policy of exclusion. Tonight, we failed that dream, and we failed you. It will not happen again. I paused, then gave a small, genuine smile. To thank you for your patience, and to reaffirm our promise, please enjoy a bottle of our finest champagne at every table, on the house. A ripple of applause started at one table, then spread through the entire room. It wasn't just polite clapping, it was warm, supportive. The tension broke. Maria and the other staff, looking at me with newfound respect, began moving with renewed purpose, their faces bright. David took my hand, his thumb stroking my knuckles. The lilies were still clutched in his other hand. "Happy anniversary, my love," he whispered, his eyes full of pride and adoration. "You are the soul of this place." He led me through the dining room, past smiling patrons raising their glasses to us, and to the best table in the house, a secluded corner booth overlooking the city lights. It had been waiting for me all along, adorned with rose petals and a single lit candle. He placed the lilies in the vase on the table. It was the perfect picture, the one he had planned. We had been tested, our dream had been threatened, but we had faced it together. The aura was back, stronger and more authentic than ever before. We had a lot of work to do, but as I looked at my husband in the warm, welcoming light of our restaurant, I knew we were exactly where we belonged.